All right. But one thing what I wanted to talk about is if mechanics are actually trying to rip you off. So I worked in the industry for 2 years at Lexus for 3 months, and then Firestone for a while. You've obviously worked in the industry a lot longer. How long were you at Tech at Honda?
So collectively it was about 7 years, a couple of years at Acura, and then yeah, about 5 years at Honda.
So whenever like a friend or family member is going to get something done, they always ask me to go with them or check up on it. And because everyone thinks that car dealership or mechanic is gonna try to rip them off. That's actually the reason that I got out of the industry because I was so tired of working on other people's pieces of shit that they just neglect. And people don't realize there's some things that you're legally required to tell them that needs to be fixed. That they think the mechanic's trying to make extra money. You have a better insight than I do, but I think we were talking about it a couple weeks ago. You know, so mechanics at first let's start with dealerships. Mechanics at dealerships, they don't care. They're not trying to rip you off. And you were telling me, the reason why.
Well, I mean, in my experience, I didn't see any of my coworkers at any of the dealerships that I work at try to rip off customers selling work that doesn't need to be done or anything like that. I mean, there is that stereotype that they're on flat rates, so they've got this incentive to try to sell as much work as possible, make more money, but they really aren't going to go out of their way to do that. I mean, that's just such a bad business practice. Like, I don't think customers will come back if they go to another dealership to get a second opinion and they say, no, that work doesn't need to be done. Then they're going to tell all their friends that the dealership is awful. And I think it gets a little bit overblown sometimes. If they have one bad experience, they'll go tell 100 people about it. And then they all are like, oh, I'm not going to take
Yeah,
my car to the dealership for
and think of it this way
service.
too, like just because like a team says, oh hey, you need to get such and such fixed. That's not necessarily the team that works on it. So the mechanic really doesn't have, or the tech doesn't have much incentive to like tell you what's wrong because they might not even be the ones that are going to get flag the hours.
Yeah, exactly. So,
So I've never worked at like an independent, small shop. You have. I remember that's where you started out. Working with another one of our friends at his shop. Like people, sometimes think those are the ones that are really shady. I don't tend to think so. I mean, what was your experience there?
no, I didn't think they were particularly shady. I don't have any bad stories to tell about working at the independent shop either. I have, we probably know a few people who have maybe had a little bit less than ideal experiences with independent shops, and I mean, the same can be said for dealerships, but that's just the nature of any business. Like a technician is not going to get anything right 100% of the time, just like a doctor is not going to get anything right 100% of the time. Like there's going to be those mistakes here and there, and you just have to take it with a grain of salt. And like I said, not get overblown about the issue. So
Yeah, and the big thing, like, so yeah, we both, had things. Well, you probably haven't because you were doing all your own work. So whenever I've had something that's, not done right at a shop, for me the big thing is if they fix it and like, okay, like our bad, we're gonna fix it for free. Just bring it back in, and then it's, what's done is done. So there really isn't again much incentive for like a good shop to try to rip off people. You know.
no, yeah, it's much more valuable to them to have that repeat customer, that lifelong customer. If they can have someone who's loyal to them for 30 or 40 years, they're going to make way more money in the long run. And shops that know that are the ones that stay in business. People who are smart enough to know
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah, like my dad, the local, Zimbrick Honda, the local Honda dealership here, he's, well, until he moved back to New York, but he was super loyal to them, and he, always bought cars from them, always took his cars in there because they always treated them right. And, I do know some people who've had, less than stellar experiences there, but, like, it's more of like kind of like a one-off thing. It's not, the norm. Like I just think that like a lot of like mechanics just get a bad rep because people, they don't take care of their cars. Bottom line, like that's what, like I said, that's why I got out. Like they don't think like they're a rusted pile of shit. Like, oh, it sounds like it's working fine. Nothing else must be wrong. But then when you're a tech, you're like, okay, well, I have to tell them about the tires because legally, after they get to a certain point, we have to tell them before they leave. Brakes, things like that, and they think, oh, they're trying to nickel and dime me and get more money, and that's really just not the case.
yeah, when they did nothing but oil changes for the first 90,000 miles
Yeah.
on the car or whatever, then they're shocked that, oh, you have some suspension work that needs to be done and the brakes need to be replaced. And
Yes. Oh,
things like that.
shocking! Oh, I was driving around in the Midwest, like in the salt and the snow, and a bunch of my shit's all rusted through now.
Yeah.
And I need to replace a bunch of stuff. So most of the stuff that people think is like mechanics should rip them off is really them just telling people what they need to hear, and people just need to realize that they don't take care of the cars.
Yeah. And I've heard many times customers say, well, our service writer who communicates directly with the customer would kind of come back and tell us that, this guy or this lady my car's never had any problems before. How could it suddenly have all these issues out of the blue? Like, it's been fine for the first 100,000 miles. How could it have all these problems all of a sudden? Like, that's how it goes sometimes. You haven't replaced anything for the life of the car, and now it maybe needs $1,000 worth of work or whatever it is.
Let's talk also about mechanics flagging hours. Also it's not exactly a walk in the park with most people's cars that have neglected them. Especially in this area, like bolts are rusted out. It's just a pain in the ass to get up in a lot of those places. Trying to break them free. Like not every car is as easy. Just nice clean bolt. Like everything works fine. So even if mechanics flagging hours, it's not necessarily they want to be.
Oh yeah, there's been times when I've sold work on a customer's car and kind of like known going into it that not only was I not going to make money on this job, but I was more than likely going to lose money on this job, and that I was going to have to get the torch out to heat up rusted bolts. Things might break along the way. So yeah, it was anything but like, oh, I'm going to just make a bunch of money quick off this.
What was your favorite tool that you use the most?
My 1/2-inch impact gun, obviously. Anytime you're taking a wheel off or anything, so you're just using that all day, every day. But the air hammer is very useful in certain situations, especially in the conditions that we live in here. The torch needs to get pulled out a lot.
Yeah. All right. Well, Colin, thanks. I just wanted to, get someone who was more experienced in this than I was. Mechanics aren't really trying to rip you off. They're just telling you basically you've been neglecting your car. So do better. Cheers.
Amen. Cheers.